Begin today the Gemara on the bottom of Tzadik Tes Samud Beis, about 8 lines from the bottom of the Yevamos. We're speaking over here about, before we're speaking about cases of a person that's a suffix if he's a Kayin, or if he's an Eved, or it's a suffix if he's a Kayin, if he's a Yisrael. Different halachas about this. One of them is that he can't go and collect Truma. So it brings now another Braise that talks about a list of people that can't go and collect Truma. Tan Rabbanan, so we learned, Asara ein chol kelem Truma bebeis agronis. There are 10 different individuals that we do not distribute Truma for them when they come to the granary to take Truma. Ve'elohein, and these are the people. Cheresh, Shaita, V'kotten, and a Tumtum, an Androgenes. A Tumtum is an individual that there's no signs if he's a Zachar or a Nekeva. Androgenes is an individual that there's a sign of both. And V'ha'eved, an Eved Kanani, that's even an Eved of a Kayin that eats Truma. All these individuals that this Braise is speaking about, and not all, some of them, are people that they themselves are allowed to eat Truma, but still they can't come and get the Truma. V'ha'isha, a woman, this is a wife of a Kayin. V'ha'arol v'ha'tamei, a Kayin that's a Arol, he has no bris, and it's not of any fault of his own, but because his brothers died when they made a bris for them, so he can't have a bris. V'ha'tamei, a Kayin that's tamei. And v'noisi isha sheina higanesloi, a Kayin that got married to a woman that's not appropriate for him. In other words, a Kayin that got married to a woman that's possible for him. But v'kulon, all of these, mishagrin lahem lebatein, even though they can't come down to the granary and collect it there, but they send the truma to their homes. Chutz mitamei v'noisi isha sheina higanesloi. Besides, a Kayin that's tamei, and a Kayin that married a woman that's not appropriate for him, so him, you don't give him truma, you don't even send it to his house. Those are the 10 individuals. So the Gemara will go through now all these different individuals, explaining the reason why they don't come to get the Truma. Now, it's understood regarding a Chere, Shaita, and Cotton that they do not come and get the Truma there in the granary. Lav b'nei deyaninu, because they have no understanding of their own. So therefore Rashi here says, for them to come and get the Truma, for Yid to give the Truma to such a kind of individual, is sort of disgraceful. It's a zilusa, it's disgraceful to give the Truma for such a kind of Kayin. So therefore you don't give it to them there, even if you could send it to them privately to their homes, but not there out in the public. Similar, Tumtum v'androgenes, an individual that's a Tumtum or androgenes, Nami, Berye b'fnei atzma ninu, so he's like a creature for himself. It's unknown if he's a Zachar or a Nekeva. So also Rashi says it's a zilusa for Kachim, it's a disgraceful for the Kachim to give it for such an individual. Eved Nami, the reason regarding an Eved, why an Eved, even an Eved of a Kayin that could eat Truma, we don't give him the Truma publicly there. So we learned this before already. The reason is because if you see him collecting Truma, so later someone might use that as a proof for the fact that he's a Kayin. Now, Arol v'tamei, and what's the reason why an Arol and a Tamei you don't give him Truma there? Mishum demiisi, because it's repulsive that Truma should be given to such an individual that had no bris or is Tamei. Naisi isha she'ena yigadneslai, to a Kayin that married a woman that he's not allowed. Why doesn't he get the Truma there? Mishum knasa. So this is a penalty. Chachamim gave him a knas not to give him the Truma. Hello, but the question is, Isha, when it comes to a woman, a wife of a Kayin, my time aloi, why does she not get the Truma? Why can't they give her the Truma there in the Beis Agronis, in the granary? Pligi ba Rav Papa v'Rav Huna b'Rei Rav Yeshua. So Rav Papa and Rav Huna b'Rei Rav Yeshua argued about the reason for this. Chad Omar, one said the reason is Mishum Grusha. Because what happens if she gets divorced from her husband, and this guy that gives her the Truma is always accustomed to giving her the Truma, and he won't realize, and he's going to give her the Truma even after she's divorced. Chad Omar, another reason is Mishum Yichud. That we're concerned that maybe she goes to collect the Truma there, she might be alone with the person that's giving her the Truma. So not to come to Yichud, to be secluded with another man alone, they were masakin not to give her the Truma there. So my benayu, what would be a practical difference between these two reasons? The difference would be in two cases. One case, Beidari, the Mekrav Lamasa, this granary that's near the city, and there's no people there. So because it's close to the city, so the person that's there in the granary knows very well what's going on with people in the city, and there's no concern that maybe she got divorced and he won't know about it. If she got divorced, he knows about it. But at the same time, though, it's a place where nobody's there, so there is an issue of yichud. Inami, or in the reverse, the merchak, a granary that's far from the city. So the person that's there has no idea what the status of this woman is. Is she still married? Did she get divorced? And v'shchichi ba'anshi, but it's a place that there's a lot of people there. So therefore there's no issue of yichud. Then it said in the Braise, "V'kulam mishagrim lahem lebateya," and all of these individuals, even though they can't come down there to the public and to get the truma, but they send it to their homes. Chutz mitamei v'nois isha sheina geneslai. Besides a kohen that's tamei, or a kohen that married a woman that he's not allowed. So the Gemara asks, Avol Adel, but when it comes to a kohen that's an Adel, he doesn't have a bris. So to him, we do send the truma to his home. My time, what's the reason? Why? Even though he doesn't get the truma there in the usual place where everyone collects it, but why do we send the truma to him? The answer is Mishum the honest. The fact that he doesn't have a bris is not because of his own choice, but because his brothers. He can't make a bris, so because it's an einis, it's out of his control, so therefore we send him the truma. If so, Tamei Nami, a kohen that's Tamei ha'anis. If he became Tamei, it's out of his control as well. So why shouldn't we send the truma to him to his home? Answers the Gemara, it's not the same thing. Ha'anis, that is the one that is oral doesn't have a bris. Nafish einse. The einis in his case is a much bigger einis, and the fact that his brothers died by a bris, it's totally out of his control. So therefore, in his case, we send him the truma. But v'hai loy nafish einse. A kohen that gets tamei, even if it's an einis, but the einis is not to such a great degree like him, because sof he became tamei. He can be more careful not to become tamei. We're in the middle of Kuf Amar Aleph on the next time in the middle. Tana Rabbanan, we learned in another Braisa, ha'eved v'ha'isha, comes to a slave of a kohen or a wife of a kohen, ein chalkel lem truma b'beis hagranis. So like we said before, we don't distribute to them the truma in the granary. U'b'mokim shechalkin, in a place where we do give truma to them, naisnan li'isha tchila, a woman, so she gets the truma first. U'paitra naisa miyad, and we send her off on her way immediately. She shouldn't have to wait there online. So the Gemara asks, my kama, what is this Braisa saying? First it says you don't give it to the woman. Then it says that if you give her first, so she shouldn't have to wait. Hachi kama, so the answer is what the Braisa is saying as follows. In the first part of the Braisa, it was talking about truma. A woman does not get the truma there in the granary. The second part of the Braisa, it's not talking about truma, it's talking about meiser ani, as the Gemara explains. B'makim shechelkin meiser ani, in a place where they're giving out not truma but meiser ani for the poor people, so that's something that even a woman could get. Naisnan leisha tchila. So you give a woman before everybody else. You shouldn't have to wait there online between all the other men. My time in mishum zilusa, because it's embarrassing for her. It's difficult for her to have to wait there amongst all the other men. So they give her first the truma. So not truma, sorry, that is ma'isa shein ani, that is. So she should be able to go on her way. Amarave, so Rava said, Meireisha, in the beginning, ki hava asa gavre ve'itza ledina kamoi. When a man and a woman came before me for a dinteira, for judgment, so have a sharina tigra de gavre bereisha, I would resolve the argument that there was between a man or between men, in other words, I gave the men to go first before I tended to the issues of a woman. Why? I said, a man is on a high level because he has mitzvahs that a woman is parted of, and he's chayiv, so a man goes first. But kivin the shamayna laha, since I heard what we said over here regarding the ma'aser ani that's distributed, that you give it to a woman first, so she shouldn't have to wait. Shasharina tigra de itza bereisha. So now I began resolving the issues that a woman has first. My time in mishum zilusa, so it shouldn't be disgraceful for her. She shouldn't have to wait there amongst all the men. Going back to the Mishnah, so regarding this case where you had a Eved and a Kohen that were mixed with one another, their identities were mixed. So what does it say? Then one went and freed the other. They each gave a document of freedom to the other, so the Eved should be freed. Higdilu ataruviz v'chulu, so they freed one another. It says the Gemara shichreru, it says in the Mishnah, they freed one another, which would sound like ibaye in. If they want, they could free one another, so whoever is the Eved will be free. And ilai ba ilai, and if they don't want, they don't have to free. In fact, the Gemara, why? We should force them to free one another. Why? Because Lisa Shivcha Eina Yachal. This individual, as the Mishnah pointed out, who could he marry? Can't marry anybody. He can't marry another Shivcha like himself because we don't think maybe he's not a Eved. Baschayrin Eina Yachal, a woman that's free, a Yid, he can't marry because maybe he is an Eved. So if this is an individual that can't get married, usually in such a case, we force the master to free this Eved. So Rava says, you're right, we have to read here in the Mishnah, Kaifin, Aisan, or Meshacherin Zeh Ezeh. In such a case, the Bezdin forces them, and they have to free one another to be sure that whoever's the Eved there gets freed. Then the last point the Mishnah said was Neisnin Aleim Chumre V'chulu, that in this case when there's two individuals and you're not sure who's the Kayin and who's the Yisrael, so we have to place upon them the stringencies of a Kayin and a Yisrael. And the Mishnah didn't spell out what it's referring to. Says the Gemara Lamai Hilchas, what is this talking about? Amar Rav Papa, so Rav Papa answers Limin Chasam. It's talking about a carbon mincha. When a carbon mincha is brought as a donation in the Beis HaMikdash, there's a difference between a Kayin and a Yisrael. By a Yisrael, the carbon mincha, what it's done is you take off a kemitza, and that kemitza is burnt in the Mizbeach, and the leftovers, the shirayim, you can eat it. By a Kayin though, what happens with the carbon mincha that he brings as an adava? The entire thing has to be burnt in the Mizbeach. So here you have this individual that's bringing a carbon mincha, and you don't know if he's a Kayin and a Yisrael. So what do you do with this mincha? So Nikmetza is Keminchas Yisrael. So first you have to take the Kemitza like it's done with the Mincha of a Yisrael, but the leftovers which you could usually eat, in this case you can't eat it. Ve'ena Nachelas Keminchas Kayinim, but you can't eat the rest like the Mincha of a Kayin. So what do you do? Hakeitzad. What do you do in such a case? Hakaimitz Karev Ba'atzmai. The kaimitz that was taken off, so first that's burnt on the Mizbeach separately. Vashirayim Karevim Ba'atzman. And then the shirayim, the leftovers, instead of usually eating it like you usually do over here, it has to also be burned separately on the Mizbeach. That's the chumrah in this case. Frag the Gemara, how could you do this? Ikri kan, shouldn't we read over here and apply the drasha that's learnt out, that it says, Kol shemimenu leishim, anytime you have something that part of it was already brought and burnt on the Mizbeach, like over here, you already took off a part, the kaimitz, to be burnt in the Mizbeach, harehu bebal taktiru. The leftovers, you're not allowed to go and burn in the Mizbeach. Leisaktiru mimenu ishal Hashem means that whatever you already brought part of it on the Mizbeach, the leftovers you can't burn in the Mizbeach. So how could you take the leftovers here and also burn it separately on the Mizbeach? Amar Rab Yehuda Bereid Rab Shimon ben Pazi, so Rab Yehuda Bereid says, the masik luhu l'shem eitzim. That leftovers that you do burn on the Mizbeach here, you're not burning it like a regular carbon, that's not allowed, but you're burning it with the intention that it should be like firewood on the Mizbeach. So even if it's not supposed to be burnt, because this individual here is not a kayin, but it's just burnt as firewood. Like Rabbi Elazar once said, the Tanya Rabbi Elazar, when you have the leftovers, so then that can't be brought on the Mizbeach as a regular carbon, that's being brought as a reach nichayach. But if you're going to bring that leftovers and it's burnt on the Mizbeach just as firewood, so that is allowed. So Mamanav Shach, if he's a Kayin, so it's burnt on the Mizbeach, and if he's Yisrael, it's being burnt as firewood on the Mizbeach. Says the Gemara, this is Rabbi Elazar, that it says that this could be done. Ela l'Rabbanan, the Rabbana that disagree and say that it cannot be burnt on the Mizbeach, even as firewood. So what are we going to say? What do we do over here with this mincha of a case where it's a suffix if he's a Kayin or a Yisrael? And says the Gemara, the Ovid law, what you do over here is Rabbi Elazar b'Rab Shimon. Like what Rabbi Elazar b'Rab Shimon said. The Tanya, Rabbi Elazar b'Rab Shimon oimer. HaKaimitz karav la'atzmai, that the kaimitz will be brought in the Mizbeach separately, and then v'hashirayim, the leftovers, mispazrin al beis hadeshen. They will be spread out on the beis hadeshen, on the place where they put the ashes on the side of the Mizbeach. So in this case, Rabbi Elazar b'Rab Shimon over here was talking about a minchas chayta, a mincha that's brought for a person that did an aveda, that he has to bring a carbon mincha for. So over there as well, so there's the halacha of a kayin, that the mincha of the kayin has to be kolol, has to be totally burnt. So over there, Rabbi Elazar b'Rab Shimon says that the kaimitz is brought in the Mizbeach, and the rest is going to be put on the Beis HaDeshen. So we do the same thing over here. We can't burn the rest on the Mizbeach, because it could be that the kaimitz was already brought on the Mizbeach, and then this is leftovers, and the leftovers can't be burnt on the Mizbeach. So therefore, you spread it out by the Beis HaDeshen. Even the Rabbanan that over there in that Braisa disagree. The Rabbanan there say by the minchas chayte of a person that it could be he's a kayin, so he says all of it has to be burned in the Mizbeach. So loy pliga le the Rabbi Elazar b'Rab Shimon, so they don't argue over there on Rabbi Elazar b'Rab Shimon. Ela b'minchas chayte shel kayinim the bas hakravihi. Over there by the minchas kayinim of the kayin, so that it has to all be brought on the Mizbeach. Aval hacha, but over here when it comes to this case where it's a suffix if he's a kayin or is a Yisrael, even the Rabbana will agree that what you do over here is that part of it is brought in the Mizbeach and the other part is spread out on the ashes. This is a piece of Gemara. If you learn the Gemara in Saita, this is the exact same piece of Gemara you have in Masechta Saita as well. Okay, now going back to various different cases where there are sfeikis, where you have all kinds of mix-ups in the identity of an individual. A woman did not wait 3 months after her husband that she was married to, and we'll see soon what happened to this husband, the Gemara will explain, but she did not wait the 3 months, and what happened? Venisis, she gets remarried, V'yolda, and now she gives birth, and it's not clear, if the child that's born was after 9 months of pregnancy from the first husband, in ben shiva, or he was born from 7 months of pregnancy from the second husband. So this is an unknown identity now. And then hayullah banim min arishain, and she has also sons from the first husband, ubanim min hasheni, and she also has sons from the second husband. So now over here you have these brothers. So some of them, it's not clear now who is this person's brothers from the first marriage or the second. And if it's from the first, that means that they share the same father. If it's the brothers from the second marriage, they don't share the same father, but they share the same mother. Right? So there's a big difference between if you share the same father or the same mother. As we learned many times, if you share the same father, then there's a mitzvah of yibum and chalitza. If you share the same mother, there's no mitzvah of yibum and chalitza. And not only that, there's always going to be the isser of eishes ach. So therefore the Mishnah says, in such a case, chaltzim v'loy meyavmin. So therefore the brothers will have to do chalitza and not yibum. They can't do yibum because it could be eishes ach. And v'chein, the same thing also, hu lahem chayletz v'loy meyavim. So this brother as well, for this individual, that his identity is unclear. So this person that his identity is unclear, for those brothers that we know who they are. So because again, it's the same suffix, whether this is his brother, a brother that shares the same father, or a brother that only shares the same mother. So therefore you can only do chalitza and not yibum. Sagt the Mishnah weiter, hayu loy achim in arishain v'achim in hasheni. What's if he had brothers, this person, that his identity is unknown, if he's born from the first marriage or from the second marriage, but now he had brothers from the first marriage and va'achim and hasheni, and also brothers from the second marriage, shaloi ma'isa ha'ein, but not brothers that share the same mother, only brothers that share the same father. So if so, there's no issue over here of an eishes ach that share the same mother, and there's no mitzvah of yibum. You don't know who has the mitzvah of yibum, either the brothers from the first marriage or the brothers of the second marriage. But both the brothers of the first marriage and the brothers of the second marriage are only brothers that share the same father, not brothers that share the same mother. So therefore, what do you do? So who chaylitz umiyam. So over here, this individual that his identity is unknown, so if he can go ahead and do chalitze or yibum for the son of the first marriage, for his brother from the first marriage, he can do yibum or chalitza. Either this is his brother, so he has the mitzvah of yibum, and if it's not his brother, so then there's no mitzvah of yibum, and it's not even related to him. He can go and get married to his wife.
Why does he need to make chalitza?
He could either or. Doesn't say he has to. Either or. He could do either chalitza or yibum. Now Rashi explains this is only in a case where he's the only brother. If there's another brother here, so then there's someone else that has the mitzvah of yibum. So therefore, you can't do either or. Someone's going to have to do chalitza first over here if you want to be sure that the chalitza is done properly. Because when you do the yibum, you don't even know if the yibum was done. So he's the only brother. Now one of these brothers over here from the first marriage or from the second marriage, so echad chaylitz, so you have over there these two different brothers. So you don't know which one is the right brother. So echad chaylitz, so because there's two different brothers here, so one of them is going to have to go ahead and do chalitza first to make sure that the mitzvah that has to be done here, that this is a mitzvah of yibum. So first that one ahead go and do chalitza. And ve'echad miyabim, and then the second one does yibum. We learned about this before already. When the second one does yibum, so then memanav shach. If the first one that did chalitza was a good chalitza, and because he's the right brother to do the chalitza, so the second one is just getting married to him. And if the second one is the right brother to do the mitzvah of yibum, so he's doing the mitzvah of yibum. Now again, coming back to this case over here of the mixed identities and applying this to the same, the Mishnah here is mamish going to be a review of what we learned before, b'negeya to a kayin that got mixed up with the Yisrael. Ha-yechad Yisrael ve'echad kayin. If over here the case is that one is a kayin, one husband was a kayin, and one husband was a Yisrael, and we don't know this child that's born, who he is he a kayin or a Yisrael? So nice isha re'uya l'kayin. So if he gets married, he could only marry a woman that's allowed to marry a kayin. He might be a kayin, he can't get tameh to a dead person. Vim nitma, if he did, ein esayfik esarbaim, we can't give him malchus. We don't know if he's a kayin or not. Ein eichel betrumeh, he can't eat trumeh. But vim achal, if he did, ein mishalim keren v'chaimish, he doesn't have to pay the principal and the fifth. And ve'ein chaylak ala gairin, he can't go and take a portion of his trumeh by the granary. When he has his own truma to give, he can't eat it himself because he might not be a kayin, so he has to sell it to another kayin. But vadamim shalai, the money you can keep because amaitz mechaveri olavaraya, so the money you can keep. He also doesn't get a portion from the kachim, which Rashi before said refers to the hides of the animals that usually the kayinim get. And we don't give him kachim, which refers to a b'chayr or other kinds of kachim that go to a kayin. If this kayin has his own b'chayr, we can't take it out of him because he can say, maybe I'm the kayin. And also, patim and azroya, v'lachayayim, v'akeva, the different sections of the animal that usually go, the foreleg and so on, that usually go to the kayin, he is pater of giving that to the kayin. And what do you do with an animal, a b'chayr, that's born in his possession? U'b'chayrai, his b'chayr, yeheiraya, is left to graze in the field, achi yistav, until he gets a mum, and once he gets a mum, he's allowed to eat it. And also, and we place upon him the stringencies of a kayin and a Yisrael, which, as we said before, refers to the carbon mincha. Now, what's if both of the husbands, in other words, we don't know who's his father, but either one that might be his father, both of them were kayinim. So then, who einin aleim? So this one, that his identity is unknown, he has to behave like an einan when any of the husbands over here, which might be his father, passes away. And veheim einan imalav, and they also have to be an einan for him. The halacha of einan is on the day when a person passes away, you can't do the aved in the Beis Hamikdash, and other halachas that apply to a relative on that day when he passes away. So both of these husbands have to be an einan for him, and he has to be an einan for them, because we don't know who's the father and who's the son here. Who einay metame lehem, he will not be allowed to become tameh to any of them because we're not sure that it's his father. And veheim einan metamim loy, and they, any of these husbands, that one of them is the father and one of them is not, cannot become tameh to him. Who einay yoirish aisan, he will not be able to yarshin any of these husbands that pass away because we don't know who's his father and who's not. And we're speaking about over here that there's other yarshim. So if there's other children that are yarshining, so the other children are going to say, prove to us that you're a Yiddish. So he can't prove, ain't safek meitzim de vaday. There's other people that are the vaday Yiddish. Aval heim yarshin oisai. If this son here, that his identity is unknown, passes away, and he has no other Yiddish, and the only one that's yarshining is the father, that's the halacha. If there's no children to yarshin, the Yerusha goes back to the father. So over here, between these two husbands, one of them is the father. So they will split the Yerusha amongst them. If he hits or curses any of these husbands, one of them might be his father. So usually a child is chayiv misa in such a case, but over here we don't know who the father is, so he's pater. And so if both of them are kayanim, he can come into the Beis Hamikdash and take part in the Aveda of the Mishmar, the group of the Kayanim that come to work in their time. He can take, it's a mitzvah he has, and the Kayanim there can't hold him back. He can say, this is my mitzvah and I want to serve now in this group. But he does not take a portion together with them because, for example, the lechem upon him or whatever else they usually take a portion of, he can't take a portion because he can't prove that he deserves it. But now if both of these husbands are from the same mishmar, so then so he can take a portion because he's either way, whoever is his father, he knows exactly which mishmar he's from. So going back to one of the cases of the Mishnah, so it said when there's a suffix, who's the brother here? So what did it say? That you do first chalitza, one brother does first chalitza, and then afterwards the second brother can do yibum. So the Gemara explains this, like we had this before already. Dafke mechlatz, first you have to have chalitza, v'hadar yivumi, and only afterwards yibum. Aval yivumi bereishe loy, but to do yibum first, that's not allowed. Why? The kapaga be yivam l'shuk, because possibly you're not the right brother, and you're marrying a woman before she had the chalitza done for her. Now the Gemara will go back here to the case of the Kayanim that the Mishnah was speaking about. It's a suffix if he's a Kayan or not. But first the Gemara brings a statement that Shmuel said, and then we'll come back to the Mishnah. So Shmuel said, Asara Kainim Mayimdim, if you have 10 Kainim that are standing, Upirish Echad Mem, and one separates from these 10 Kainim, Ubal, and he went and he had a relation with a woman. So now the child that's born, now the problem is we don't know which one of these 10 Kainim is the father of this child. So Avlat Shtuki. This child that's born is a shtuki, meaning we silence anybody that wants to say his identity, who his father is. We don't know who his father is. But my shtuki. So the Gemara wants to understand regarding what? Regarding what do we silence someone when they want to say the yichus of this person that we don't know who the father is? What's the relevance of this? Is it saying here that we silence him regarding coming to Yarshin, to take a Yerusha of his father? So pshita, that's obvious. Miyadin and avu amanu. Do we know who his father is? If we don't know who his father is, so obviously he can't get a Yerusha. That's obvious. That's not what Shmuel came to say. Ella, rather, what did Shmuel come to say? Shemishatkin oisai midin kohuna. That we silence him also from the halacha of a kayin, meaning if he comes and says, I want to serve in the Beis HaMikdash, we don't allow him to serve in the Beis HaMikdash until he can come and identify who his father is. Why is this? Now the chiddush over here is, we know for sure that he's a kayin. The only issue is we don't know who his father is, but we know he's a kayin, so why shouldn't he be allowed to serve in the Beis HaMikdash? My time, Makra, because the pasuk says regarding a kayin serving the Beis HaMikdash, v'hoisa loy ulezaroi acharov, that the work in the Beis HaMikdash will be for him, for Aaron HaKayin, and for his children that follow afterwards. So it says ulezaroi acharov. What do we learn for this? Be'inon zaroi miyuchas acharov. In order to serve in the Beis HaMikdash, you have to be a descendant, a child that's miyuchas, that you know your lineage, you know exactly who your father is. And veleke, over here he doesn't know who his father is, and therefore he can't serve. So that's what the words zaroi acharov, especially this word acharov, teaches me. Maskefla Rav Papa. So based on this drasha, Rav Papa asks, Elameyatev. So there's another pasuk where it says a similar expression. Gabi Avram dechsiv. By Avram, the Eibush says to him, Lias l'chal elikim. And for your descendants that follow after you. So over here, Hasa Maika Mazale Rachmana. So if the word Acharav by the Kayin is a drasha, so over here the word Acharecha, what is this word Acharecha coming to darshan? What exactly is the Eibush telling Avram Avinu Acharecha that your child should be after you? Answers the Gemara, Hachika Malay. This is what the Eibush was telling Avram Avinu. That you should not marry a guy or a shivcha, the leilezel zaracha basra. So then your children the lineage of your children, the yichus will not go after the father, but the yichus goes after the mother, and your children will not be yidden. That's what the pasuk is warning there. Now the Gemara asks a question on this halacha of Shmuel. Again, the point that Shmuel said is that if you don't know the identity of this yichus, of this kain, even if you know for a fact that he's a kain, but you just don't know who the father is, he can't serve in the Beis HaMikdash. So there's a braisa that says, and this is quoted earlier in the Masechta, Rishain. So over here it's speaking about a case where a person passed away without children, and you have the mitzvah of Yibum, and the brother came and did Yibum, but he didn't wait 3 months, so we know who the child is. Is it a child from the first, for the second? Similar to what we had in our Mishnah here. So it says there, Rishain, the first child that's born, Roy Liyah is Kohen Gadol. So this child is Roy to be a Kohen Gadol. So what do we see over here? This is a case where this child is a suffix. We don't know who this child is. Is this child coming from the first marriage? Is this child coming from the second? And nevertheless, what does the Mishnah say? There is Roy to be a Kohen Gadol. So now this is only the first child though. Okay, I'm not going to go back to that Bryce over there, but the component, the first child is Roy to be a Kohen Gadol, even though we don't know who his father is. But didn't Shmuel say that you have to have this Kayin to know who his father is, to have the Yichus known to him. Only then could he serve the Beis HaMikdash. And the Lekke over here, he doesn't know who his father is. Answers the Gemara, Zarai miyuches achrav. This halacha that Shmuel said, that the Kayin has to know who his father is, the Rabbanan. The truth is, this is only something that the Chachamim instituted. Minat Torah, you don't have to know. We brought a pasuk before. Ukra asmachta ba'alma. The pasuk we brought before was just the Chachamim relying on the pasuk, but it's not the source for this. So if it's something the Chachamim instituted, why did they institute this? Why did they institute that a Kohen should have to know who his father is? So the Gemara explains, V'chi gazer Rabbanan, when did the Chachamim decree that a Kohen that doesn't know who his father is can't serve in the Beis HaMikdash? Biznus That's when it was an immoral relationship, and he was born out of this, so we don't know who his father is. So the Chachamim were guys that he shouldn't serve in the Beis HaMikdash. B'nisuin, however, if it's a case where his father was married legitimately, the first marriage, the second marriage, and we don't know who the child is, loy gazer rabbanan. Over there, the Chachamim were not geyser. So therefore, in that brayso we just quoted, it was speaking about there was one marriage, and then the passed away, and the brother did Yevamos. So it's not a case of znus. So over there, Chachamim were not geyser. Frag the Gemara, ubeznos mi gazer rabbanan. Can you say that in a case where there was an immoral relationship, and then there's a child born, and he doesn't know who his father is, even if he knows for a fact that he's a kohen, that he can't serve in the Beis HaMikdash, is that true? But we learned in our Mishnah. So beginning with the first halacha of our Mishnah, what are we speaking about? A person, a woman that is, did not wait 3 months after she was married to one person. And she got married to someone else, and she gave birth. And now we don't know who the child is. We don't know if it's a child from the first kohen or from the second kohen. So now what is the case over here? Mai achar baila. What is the case when the Mishnah said that she went and got married after she was married to her first husband? She went and got married to another husband. How did she get married to a second husband? What happened exactly? If you're going to say the case is achar misas baila, the first husband passed away, and she should have waited 3 months before she gets married to a second husband, and she didn't wait. That's the case. If so, aim is sefer. Let's see what it says in the sefer regarding what we're speaking about here. It says there as follows: Hu einen aleihem. That this person that we don't know who he is, we don't know what his identity is, he has to be a einan for both of these husbands here, because either one could be his father. And then it says, V'heim einanim olav. And they, both of the fathers, both of the husbands that is, they have to be a einan for him if he passes away. So what do we see over here? What are we speaking about? We see over here, we're speaking about that both of these men are still alive. So the Gemara explains. Now, it would be understood when it says over here, who einan aleihem, that this individual has to be an einan for both of these husbands here. So that could be even if both of them are not alive. Because mishkachas law, it's possible, b'nisuin d'sheni, that the first husband passed away, and she got married to a second husband, and v'likot atzama is the kama. So, okay, what the Gemara is saying over here is that could be only the second husband is alive. The first husband is not alive. Now, he would be a einan for the second husband if he passes away now. So he'll have to be a einan for him. And likot atzama is the kama means even if the first husband passed away a long time ago, but if they uncover his bones that were not buried properly, and you have a mitzvah to bury them today, so the child has to be a einan on that day when you find his bones that were not buried. So it is possible that he already passed away a long time ago, but today he has to be an einan for him if they find his bones. But Ella, however, what the Mishnah said though, heim einanim olav, that both of these husbands, because it's unknown who is the father of this son, so if this son passes away, they have to be an einan for him. How is this possible that we're saying that both have to be an einan for him? Kama hamisla. We're saying that the first husband passed away, and that's how the mother got remarried to another husband. So that's not the case. The first husband did not pass away. So ve'ela, what are you going to say? The case of our Mishnah over here is begrusha. The case is that this is a woman that got divorced from the first husband. Umayacha baila, when it says that she left her first husband and got remarried, and she didn't wait 3 months. Achar get baila. That means after she got a get from the first husband and she got remarried. That's the case. But the Gemara again will point out that it doesn't fit with what it says in the Sefer. So what does it say later in the Sefer? One of the halachas it says is, Hu mitame lehem. So this child cannot be mitame to both of these husbands. He doesn't know who his father is. And they, both of them, cannot be metamet to him. So does this fit with saying over here that the mother got divorced and got remarried to a kohen? So the Gemara says, Bishloime, hein ein metamen loy. So it's understood the halacha that it says that the two husbands, they cannot be metamet to him l'chumre, because we have to be stringent. The chochad v'chad dil milav bereyu. A kohen is only allowed to be metamet to his son, but not to someone that's not his son. So we don't know which one is the father, and so therefore we don't know who's the son. So therefore we have to be machmer that the father, both of these husbands, can't become tamid to him. But the Ella, now if we're saying that the case is that this woman was a grusha, she got divorced from her first husband, and she got remarried to a second husband, which is a kohen. Is a kohen allowed to get married to a grusha? Of course not. So then what would happen? The child is a chalal. So if so, Elohu ein mitame lehem, when it says that he, the son, cannot become tamei to his father, to both of these husbands here, amai, why not? So if you make the cheshbon, it comes out as follows. It's understood this, that he can't become tamei to the second one. So that's understood, because maybe it's asa for him. But Ella lirishain, however, to the first husband though, litamele, let him become tamei to the first husband. The Gemara explains why. Either way you look at it, it's allowed for him to become tamei to the first husband. Why? If he's the son of the first husband, shapik kametamele. So then it's the good that it's right. He's allowed to become tamei. This is his father. And vi bar basrahu, and if he's the son of the second husband, also shapik kametamele, he's allowed to become tamei to the first husband. Why? The chalalu, because now he's a chalal. If he's a child of the second husband, that means that his mother, which was a grusha, married this kohen, so he's a chalal. And a chalal, the halachas of a kohen that is not allowed to that's not allowed to become tamei, doesn't apply. So therefore, why shouldn't he be allowed to become tamei to her first husband? So that's the question over here. So Bekitzer, the Gemara is pointing out that when the Mishnah said that we had here the case of this woman that there was one husband and then she got married to a second husband, based on what it says in the Sefer of the Mishnah, it can't be speaking about that the first husband passed away. And it also can't be speaking about a case that the first husband divorced her. So what are we speaking about? Ela lav biznus. So don't you think we're speaking about there was no marriage here, b'chlal? It was just an immoral relationship as nus. Umayacha when it says that she had a relation with one husband and she left the first husband to go to the second, it didn't mean a husband. Achabayala. What it meant is she had a relationship without a marriage to the first husband, and then she got married to someone else, or she had a relationship with a second husband. That's what we're speaking about, not with a marriage. So there's no one died over here, and there's no gedushin over here. The Katani Sefer, and now, what does it say in the Sefer of the Mishnah? Oile b'mishmar shel zeh v'shel zeh, that this kohen, if we don't know which mishmar he belongs to, so he's allowed to go and work in the Beis HaMikdash to the mishmar of the one husband and the mishmar of the other husband, and we can't push him off. To Yufta the Shmuel, if so, this refutes what Shmuel said. What did Shmuel say? In a case where you have a child that we know for a fact he's a kohen, but we don't know who his father is, and it's a case of znus, the father had an immoral relationship, Chacham that the child shouldn't serve in the Beis HaMikdash. But here in our Mishnah, the only way to explain the case is a case of znus, and the Mishnah says that the child could go serve in the Beis HaMikdash. So the Gemara gives a few answers. There is another case we could say. Our Mishnah is not talking about a case where the husband passed away or the husband divorced her, but it's also not talking about znus. It's talking about a case of mima enes. What's the case of mima enes? A ketana, her father passed away, and her brothers or her mother married her off. So as we learned before in this Masechta, that's only a kedushin b'derabanan. And when she becomes a gedola, she could be memayin, she could leave her first husband and go get married to someone else, even without a get. So when she leaves her first husband, she's not called a grusha. That's how she can marry a second kohen, and the child that would be born would not be a chalal. Our whole issue we had is that if she's a grusha, the child that's born from this is a chalal. But no, she's a mema'anis. Mema'anis means that she rejects the whole marriage from the beginning. That's the case we're speaking about. And she had a child, and we don't know if this child is from the first marriage or the second marriage. That can be though. We're talking about a ketana that is rejecting the first marriage and now she's marrying someone else. Mika Yalda. Could she ever give birth? Why would we even have a doubt that maybe she gave birth from the first husband? If she's a ketana, she can't give birth. Because Vatani Rav Bevik Hamed Rav Nachman, so he taught the following halacha. We also learned it here in this Masechta. Shalosh Nashim Mishamshes B'moich. There are 3 different women that are allowed to have relations using a garment to make sure that they don't become pregnant. A ketana, this is a ketana, a mu'beres, a pregnant woman, and a menika, a nursing woman. What's the reason? Ketana shema tesaber v'tomus. A ketana, if she'll become pregnant, it's dangerous for her, she could die. Mu'beres shema tasa ubra sandal. If she's already pregnant, so if she gets a second pregnancy, so then the first fetus could be squeezed and it'll be misformed. Menika, a woman that's nursing, Shema Tigbulas Benavi Yamas. So if she becomes pregnant at this point, so she'll have to stop nursing that baby she has and he can die. So and then the Braisa there says, Ve'ezihi Ketana, who is a Ketana that cannot give birth, and therefore it's dangerous for her. Mibas Aches Es Teshana V'yoy Mechad Ad Bashteimas Teshana V'yoy Mechad. from the age of 11 to the age of 12. Because in that year, it's so younger than this, she can't. Pachis mikan. Oyesa came shameshes kedarka vayleches. Younger than this, we're not concerned that she'll ever get pregnant. She can't get pregnant. Above this age, it's not dangerous. But in that age, she could become pregnant, but she can die. Divrei Rab Meir. Chachamim say achazu va'achazu mishameshes kedarka. In all of these cases, either way, they can have relations normally without doing any preventive thing that you shouldn't become pregnant. And the Eibishter will have mercy and make sure that nothing dangerous happens. Shenem, as the pasuk says, Shem psoyim Hashem. Hashem guards those that can't take care of themselves. The Eibishter takes care of them. But what's the Gemara's question here? We see from this brayse that a katana can't give birth, and until she's 12 years old, it's dangerous. So how can we say over here that this is the case here, that the first husband, she was a katana, ma'enes, and maybe the child was born from the first marriage? So the Gemara gives a different answer. Mishkachas lo b'kiddushitos. The case over here in this Mishnah could be that the first husband, there was a kiddushin which ended up being a mistake. What does a kiddushin that ended up being a mistake mean? When the marriage was made, when the kiddushin was made with a condition, and they thought that the condition was fulfilled, and it turns out that the condition was never fulfilled. So if the condition was not fulfilled, so retroactively the whole kiddushin is uprooted. So this is a case where there was no znus, it was legitimate, they thought they were married, but on the other hand there's no geirushin here either. It turns out that they were never married, and in such a case she went and got remarried to someone else. The pasuk says, V'hi lo nispasa asura, that if a woman, she was mizana, she had an immoral relationship with someone and it was not against her will, so then she's also to go back to her first husband. Ha nispasa, but if she was caught, if it was against her will, then mutara, she can go back to her first husband. But the pasuk said vihi. Vihi is a miyut. So from this we learn out v'yesh l'cha acheres. There is another case. Sha'afal pi shelo nispasa, even though it wasn't against her will, muteres, she can go back to her husband. Ve'ezuzu. In what case is this? Shekidusha kiddushay tos. In a case where she got married and she thought it was a legitimate marriage, but there was a condition, and it turns out that the whole marriage was a mistake. So in such a case, even though she went and had a relation with this man willingly, and it's sort of a relationship without a marriage, but we don't treat it as znus. Even if she had a child that was born from this, nevertheless, she could reject and walk away from this marriage and get remarried to someone else because it wasn't done in a way of znus. She thought that it was a legitimate marriage. And that's the case that our Mishnah was talking about. So it's not a question on Shmuel. Shmuel that said that a child that's born can't serve in the Beis HaMikdash is only a real znus. In such a case, the child can't serve in the Beis HaMikdash.